Welcome back to Fusty Stories. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and get ready for another story you won't forget. Let's dive back to the story. Rain battered the cobblestone driveway as Amelia Bennett stood frozen before the heavy oak doors of her Surrey home. Her husband, Edward, had just slammed them shut after a vicious argument over a plan to leave her corporate banking job to start a nonprofit. His words cut deep. "You're throwing your life away for foolish dreams." Amelia's chest ached as thunder cracked overhead. She tried her keys, but the lock had been changed. When she knocked, Edward's mother, Lady Margaret Bennett, appeared through the window with cold, piercing eyes. "My son needs a woman of ambition, not charity," she spat. The humiliation stung more than the rain that soaked Amelia's hair and dress. Trembling, she turned away, her heels splashing through puddles as the mansion lights faded behind her. She had no car, no umbrella, only her handbag and a heart shattered by betrayal. She hailed a late-night taxi and directed it to her grandmother Eleanor's modest flat in Croydon. As the car sped into the dark, Amelia whispered to herself, "So this is what love costs." For the first time in years, she felt utterly alone, stripped of dignity, yet strangely free. Eleanor Grant's flat smelled of lavender and old books. The elderly woman, frail but sharp-eyed, opened her arms without question as Amelia stepped in dripping wet. "Oh, my darling girl," Eleanor said softly, wrapping her in a wool blanket. Over tea, Amelia broke down completely, confessing how Edward had changed since his parents began controlling every decision in their marriage. "They never saw me as one of them, Gran," she sobbed. "I was always the outsider." Eleanor's voice was firm. "Then perhaps being cast out is the beginning, not the end." For days, Amelia tried to contact Edward, calls unanswered, messages unread. She didn't know he had rushed to a business crisis in Manchester, his phone battery dead. In her mind, his silence was confirmation that he truly wanted her gone. Eleanor watched her granddaughter sink into quiet despair, but she also saw a spark, the same stubborn fire that once made her leave her own privileged family to build a life from scratch. "You'll rise again, my love," she said one morning. "And when you do, they'll wish they never turned you away." When Edward returned home 3 days later, the emptiness of the house struck him like a blow. Amelia's wardrobe was half empty, her favorite mug gone. He called her repeatedly, drove to Croydon, and even filed a missing person report. His parents dismissed it all. "You're being dramatic," Lady Margaret snapped. "She left you, Edward. Focus on your business and find someone who belongs to our world." But Edward couldn't. Each corner of the mansion whispered her name. Meanwhile, Amelia tried to rebuild her routine. She helped Eleanor at the local community center, cooking meals for struggling mothers. Her compassion caught the attention of the neighborhood, yet she kept silent about her pain. One evening, she saw her name on the local news, missing banker's wife still unfound. Her heart twisted. He was looking for her. For a moment, she thought of calling him, but then remembered the humiliation, the storm, the locked door. She switched off the TV and whispered, "Let him feel what abandonment truly means." A month later, the heartache doubled. Eleanor fell ill suddenly, collapsing in the kitchen. Amelia rushed her to the hospital, holding her frail hand as monitors beeped weakly. "You have always been my greatest pride," Eleanor murmured. "Never let the world convince you you're small." That night, she passed away quietly, leaving Amelia shattered beyond words. The funeral was small, just a few close friends. Edward never came. He didn't know. When the lawyer handed Amelia a sealed envelope, she almost didn't open it. Inside was a letter written in elegant cursive. "My dearest Amelia, if you are reading this, I am gone. Everything I built, the estates, the trusts, the foundation, now belongs to you. Use it to heal the world, not to hurt it." The accompanying documents left Amelia speechless. Eleanor Grant was the anonymous founder of the Grant Holdings Group, one of the UK's quietest but wealthiest conglomerates. Amelia, the so-called outsider, was now a billionaire heiress. For days, Amelia sat in Eleanor's study, surrounded by boxes of legal files, company shares, and property deeds. She couldn't comprehend at all the hidden empire, the investments across London, Edinburgh, and Paris. She met with Eleanor's trusted attorney, Mr. Collins, who explained everything calmly. "Your grandmother was discreet about her wealth to test people's hearts. Now it's your turn. Amelia felt both humbled and terrified. The shock turned into purpose. She immediately instructed the lawyers to transfer all assets quietly and register a new charity, the Eleanor Grant Foundation, focused on women's education and housing. She didn't want revenge. She wanted impact. But deep inside, memories of Edward's coldness still burned. At night, she'd look out at the city lights and whisper, "I wish you could see me now, not for the money, but for the woman I've become." Edward's life had collapsed without her. His company suffered setbacks, his investors withdrew, and his conscience haunted him. He barely slept, spending nights scrolling through photos of Amelia. His mother's nagging only deepened his regret. "She was never fit for us," Lady Margaret insisted. "Move on." But he finally snapped. "You made me drive her away." The argument was loud enough for the staff to hear. Edward began visiting shelters and charities, hoping she might volunteer there. He left messages on social media, pleading for her to contact him. Unknown to him, Amelia saw those messages through a friend's phone but stayed silent. She wanted him to understand that love couldn't survive pride. He looked thinner, his once sharp suits hanging loose. The world saw a powerful businessman crumbling, but Amelia saw a man learning humility the hard way. 6 months later, Amelia returned quietly to her old neighborhood to collect her remaining belongings. The mansion gates creaked open. The air smelled of roses, the same ones she once planted. When Edward opened the door, he froze. She stood there in a tailored beige coat, eyes steady but distant. "Amelia," he whispered, "you're alive." She nodded, emotionless. "I came for my things." He tried to explain the dead phone, the emergency trip, his regret. "I never meant to abandon you," he said, voice cracking. "When I came back, you were gone." She looked away, her heart warring between anger and compassion. "Your family made sure I felt unwanted long before that night," she replied. "And you let them." His eyes filled with tears. "Please, let me make it right." She took a deep breath. "Then prove it. Without them." Amelia refused to move back immediately. She rented a flat overlooking the Thames and focused on her new foundation. She attended galas, met world leaders, and began funding women's shelters, all anonymously. Edward, meanwhile, began distancing himself from his family's real estate empire, starting a small firm focused on affordable housing. He hoped his actions would speak louder than apologies. When they met occasionally for coffee, Amelia noticed a change. He listened more, boasted less. He talked about values, not profit, yet she guarded her secret. He still didn't know about the inheritance. To him, she was simply doing well. To her, he was on trial. Late at night, she watched his interviews on television, where he credited "the woman who taught me what love really means." It was enough to make her heart ache, but not enough to forgive completely. Months later, a gold embossed invitation arrived at Edward's doorstep. The Eleanor Grant Foundation official launch gala, London Gold Coast Hotel. The sender, Amelia Grant Bennett. His breath caught. She was using her grandmother's surname now, the sign of her transformation. He arrived at the event in a simple black tuxedo, avoiding the cameras. The ballroom glittered with chandeliers, dignitaries, and royals. Then she appeared, elegant in a white gown, her dark skin glowing under the lights, confidence radiating from every step. Edward's mother, seated across the room, nearly choked when she realized who the host was. Amelia's speech silenced the hall. "Tonight, we honor the legacy of women who were underestimated, yet changed the world." Her voice trembled slightly, but her gaze was firm when it met Edward's across the crowd. He finally understood. She wasn't the woman he once dismissed. She was power, grace, and justice reborn. After the gala, Edward approached her in private. "You've built something extraordinary," he said quietly. "Your grandmother would be proud." She smiled faintly. "She left me everything," she finally confessed. "The properties, the companies, the fortune, all of it." He stood frozen. You inherited it all." She nodded. "And I used it to become the woman your family said I could never be." Tears filled his eyes, but not from greed. "It doesn't change how I feel," he whispered. "I was proud of you before I knew." Amelia studied him carefully, her heart softening. "I needed to see if your love was stronger than your pride. Now I know." For the first time in a year, she smiled, not out of pity, but peace. "Maybe now," she said gently, "we can start again, on our own terms." In the weeks following the gala, Amelia and Edward began meeting quietly, away from public eyes. They walked through Hyde Park, talked over tea, and tried to mend the broken pieces of their marriage. Yet, Amelia's heart carried scars. She remembered every insult, every cold stare from his family, and every moment of doubt. "You say you've changed," she said one afternoon, "but have you learned to stand on your own without their approval?" Edward nodded. "I built my new firm from nothing. My parents disowned me for it, but I finally feel free." Amelia studied his face, thinner, older, but calmer. There was no arrogance left in his eyes, only quiet remorse. For the first time, she believed he wasn't chasing her for wealth or status. He wanted her, just her. Still, she wasn't ready to return to him. "Love must grow in truth, not guilt," she told him gently. "If this is real, it will survive distance." He agreed, vowing to earn back her trust, not through grand gestures but consistency. Across Surrey, the Bennett estate faced ruin. Edward's father's shady dealings were exposed in the press, leading to frozen accounts and investigations. Their family business, once envied, crumbled under scandal. Lady Margaret's name became a symbol of arrogance and collapse. In desperation, she called Edward, hoping to manipulate him into returning. "You're our only hope now," she cried. "You must take control." But Edward refused. "You threw away the one person who held our family together," he replied coldly. "Now you're reaping what you sowed." Lady Margaret, proud and broken, wept for the first time in years. Meanwhile, Amelia learned about their downfall through the news. She didn't gloat. She simply sighed. "Life has its own way of teaching lessons," she murmured. Her grandmother's words echoed in her mind. Never seek revenge, only justice through grace. Instead of celebrating their failure, Amelia began planning something more meaningful, a silent act of mercy that would test whether her heart still carried bitterness. Late one evening, Amelia received a call from an unknown number. The trembling voice on the other end was unmistakable, Lady Margaret. "Amelia," she began, "I don't deserve to ask this, but Edward's father has fallen ill. We're losing everything. Please, could you come?" Amelia's chest tightened. The same woman who once threw her out now sounded defeated, stripped of pride. "I'll come," Amelia said softly. She didn't know why. Perhaps forgiveness was a final step toward freedom. When she arrived at the once grand mansion, the sight startled her. The garden was overgrown, the marble floors dull. Lady Margaret greeted her in tears, no longer the towering matriarch, but a weary mother. "I was wrong," she confessed. "I thought wealth defined worth. You proved otherwise." Amelia simply nodded. "I forgive you," she whispered. And for the first time, the two women embraced, not as enemies, but as humans humbled by life. Edward entered the room, stunned to see his wife comforting his mother. His father lay in a hospital bed nearby, weak and remorseful. "Amelia," he said faintly, "I treated you unjustly. Forgive an old fool." Tears blurred her eyes as she squeezed his hand. "Rest, Mr. Bennett. The past is gone." When he passed days later, Amelia organized a funeral, quietly, with dignity. Guests whispered in awe that the woman once scorned was now the one holding the family together. At the ceremony, journalists circled, eager to expose the mystery philanthropist who saved the Bennetts from bankruptcy by secretly purchasing their debts. But Amelia refused interviews. "Let them talk," she said to Edward. "We'll write our own story." As they left the graveside, Edward looked at her with deep respect. "You saved us without asking for anything." She smiled. "I didn't do it for you. I did it because mercy is wealth's highest form." Months passed, and Amelia's foundation became a force across the UK. Her leadership style, quiet yet fierce, drew admiration from politicians and royals alike. She launched programs for single mothers, funded scholarships for rural girls, and transformed abandoned estates into housing projects. Her face appeared on magazine covers, but her humility remained. "I am my grandmother's granddaughter," she often said. "Not a queen, just a servant of purpose." Edward's new company, Bennett Developments, began collaborating with her foundation to build affordable communities. Their partnership rekindled a closeness that words could no longer deny. They laughed again, genuinely. People saw a power couple not bound by wealth, but by shared values. For the first time in years, Amelia didn't feel like an outsider. She felt like destiny's chosen vessel. Eleanor's legacy was alive and thriving. 1 year after Eleanor's death, Amelia hosted a gala in her honor at the Savoy. The ballroom shimmered in gold and ivory. Celebrities, leaders, and philanthropists gathered, but the most anticipated moment came when Amelia took the stage. Her voice trembled at first, then steadied. "Tonight, we celebrate the strength of women who rise from rejection," she declared, "because being cast aside is sometimes how the universe clears your path." The room erupted in applause. Edward watched from the crowd, proud tears glistening in his eyes. When she invited him to the stage, the audience gasped. "A year ago," she said softly, "we stood on opposite sides of pride. But love, like light, finds its way through the cracks." They held hands as the crowd rose in ovation. In that moment, the wounds of the past dissolved. They were equals again, partners in purpose, not possession. The next morning, tabloids exploded with headlines. "Edward's mother begs forgiveness from billionaire daughter-in-law." Cameras followed Lady Margaret everywhere, capturing her tearful apology. For once, public sympathy favored Amelia. The same society that had mocked her background now called her the heart of Britain. But Amelia handled it gracefully. "There's no victory in humiliation," she told reporters. "Only lessons." Yet, Edward's former business rivals were furious. One, Charles Whitmore, tried to sabotage their housing project out of jealousy. Amelia exposed him publicly, revealing falsified records and embezzlement. The scandal crushed him, and Edward defended her fiercely on live television. "My wife is proof that kindness is strength." The clip went viral, restoring their reputation completely. Together, they stood taller than ever, not because of money, but because of shared courage. Weeks later, Edward invited Amelia to the same lakeside estate where he had first proposed years ago. The sun was setting, painting the water gold. He knelt once again, not with a diamond ring, but with a simple silver band engraved with the words "by grace, not pride." Amelia gasped softly. "Edward." He looked up, eyes glistening. "I lost you once because I let others define our love. I won't make that mistake again." Tears streamed down her cheeks as she whispered, "I forgive you, and I choose us again." When he slipped the ring on her finger, it felt like closing a long, painful circle. The wind carried the sound of laughter, hers, pure and free. That evening, beneath the twilight sky, two souls once divided by pride were finally made whole. Months later, the Bennett story became a national symbol of redemption. Amelia and Edward merged their ventures under the Bennett Grant Group, dedicated to ethical real estate and philanthropy. Their projects spread across Africa and Europe, touching millions. Amelia's office overlooked the Thames, a view she once dreamed of when she had nothing. Now, she used it not to boast, but to remind herself how far grace could travel. Edward's mother became a quiet supporter of Amelia's work, volunteering in women's shelters under the foundation's name. "You've changed me," she confessed once. Amelia smiled. "No, life did. I just gave it a push." The once divided family now gathered each Sunday, not in wealth, but warmth. For the first time, the Bennett home felt like home. 2 years later, Amelia stood before a mirror in her penthouse, preparing for a BBC interview about her new book, The Power of Rejection. She smiled at her reflection, no longer the woman drenched in rain and shame, but a symbol of rebirth. Edward entered, placing a gentle kiss on her forehead. "Ready, Mrs. Bennett?" She laughed softly. "Always." As the camera lights glowed, she looked straight into the lens. "When they kicked me out, I thought I'd lost everything," she said. "But sometimes being thrown out is how life throws you upward." The audience erupted in applause. Later that night, she walked onto her balcony overlooking the glittering city. The wind whispered softly through her hair, the sound of peace, freedom, and unbreakable grace. Amelia Bennett, once the woman rejected, now reigned, not as a queen of riches, but as a woman who owned her story completely. That's all for today. Like, subscribe, and see you in the next episode. Stay tuned.